Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jędrzej Paszkiewicz. I have the honor to be together with Mr. Adam Jaskulski, the moderator of today's panel entitled Dialogue and Reconciliation Experiences of Societies in the Western Balkans. The present day meeting has been included into the session dedicated to the Polish-German experiences and overcoming conflicts in the Western Balkans. The hosts of the panel are the Institute for Western Affairs and the Faculty of Political Science and Journalism of Adam Mickiewicz University. It's a great pleasure for us to welcome you all. At this stage, we would like to introduce in alphabetical order the participants of the panel. We would like to welcome Mrs. Nora Ahmetaj, Dražana Lepir, Marijana Toma, and Vesna Teršelič. Simultaneously, I have to mention that one of the guests, Ms. Marijana Toma from Belgrade, couldn't come to Poland, so she's connecting with us using Skype, I hope.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce our guests shortly. So, Ms. Nora Ahmed is a senior member of the preparatory team for preparing the roadmap for the establishment of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Kosovo. Until 2012, she was a member of the Regional Coordination Council of Coalitions for setting up the Regional Truth Commission, former Yugoslavia, RECOM. She's also a founder of the Center for Research, Documentation and Publication. She was trained in an advanced learning course for professionals on dealing with the past in Switzerland. She was also a fellow at Alliance for Historical Dialogue and Accountability at the Columbia University in New York and within the residence program at McGill Law School's Center for Human Rights and Legal Pluralism. Ms. Ahmetaj was trained in human rights and international relations at the Carr Center for the Human Rights Policy at Harvard John Fitzgerald Kennedy School of Government and in a Peace and Conflict Transformation Studies from the University of Tromsø. Ms. Dražana Lepir is a professor and philosopher of philosophy and sociology born in Banja Luka, Bosnia and Herzegovina. She is an accomplished activist in one of the founders of the Ostra Nula Citizens Association. She is also a participant of various initiatives and social movements in Bosnia and Herzegovina, interested in social engagement and political activity in the public sphere. Ms. Marijana Toma currently works as a program manager for Memorial Western Balkans project. She is a consultant on different transitional justice initiatives in the region and internationally. Since 2002, she has worked on transitional justice initiatives as a member of the Humanitarian Law Center. She worked on documentation, war crimes, oral history, education, and transnational justice. Moreover, she was the member and coordinator of the expert group for drafting the mandate for RECOM, Serbia program coordinator in Impunity Watch, and worked in the International Center for Transnational Justice in Cape Town, South Africa. And last but not least, Ms. Vesna Teršelič is the founder and director of the organization Documenta Center for Dealing with the Past based in Croatia. The center aim on her work is to establish factual truth about the war and to contribute to shifting the discussion from the level of dispute over facts toward a dialogue on interpretations. In doing so, she continues her previous work as the director of the Center for Peace Studies in Zagrzeb and the founder of and coordinator of the anti-war campaign in Croatia. She was one of the initiators of non-political regional coalition of civil society organizations and individuals working to establish RECOM, awarded the Right Livelihood Award in 1998 for her efforts in building peace and affirming right to truth, justice and remembrance in post-Yugoslavia countries after having been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1997. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad we can hear so great selection of panelists to speak about their lessons learned over the past 20 years and also to look ahead in the panel. There is a range of different activities under consideration and realization with regard to the reconciliation process in the Western Balkan region. I'm sure it will be possible to debate this and highlight the key themes, trends, prospects, current practices as well. Especially interesting will be to learn the developments from different actors and influencers. The wonderful thing about this panel is also the local perspective the participants, the panelists bring to this discussion. Well, the process of reconciliation in the Western Balkan states is officially considered one of the most important steps for the whole region towards the Euro-Atlantic integration. It has been included into the official attitude and policy of the European Community as the key factor for creating security and political stability. In terms of the Western Balkans, the reconciliation issue is also strongly connected with the process of transitional justice, which refers to the set of different measures, judicial and non-judicial, in order to redress the legacies of massive human rights abuses from the time of military conflicts in the so-called post-Yugoslav area. I would like to ask you, how should we comprehend the meaning of the term reconciliation process in the Western Balkans, taking into consideration your personal experiences and the characteristics of the public life in your countries? Is it possible to create any common definition of this term on the Western Balkan ground, which could be effective in the practice of the whole region? Well, first I'd like to ask Ms. Marijana Toma from Belgrade to take the floor via Skype. I hope it will be possible now. The introduction and then... Hello.
Hello, I'm very happy to be with you and to be able to address the conference. Unfortunately, I was not able to come to Poland due to my illness. I would like to speak about the process of reconciliation, particularly in relation to the process of dealing with the past in Serbia. And I'm really sorry that I wasn't able to hear what my colleagues are going to say or they said about Croatia, Kosovo, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, because the process is so intertwined and dependent on each other. It's very difficult to look at the process of dealing with the past in any of the countries as separate and independent, fully independent from the other countries. Since political changes in Serbia in 2000 and Milosevic losing the elections, the governments that came afterwards had struggled a lot with the legacy of the atrocities committed in the armed conflicts in the former Yugoslavia, primarily with the responsibility of the Serbian forces or the forces that were under Serbia's control, which meant that despite the official version of the Milosevic regime that Serbia did not participate in the conflicts in Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, the number of people, the number of persons who were, for example, finding refugee in Serbia and were accused for war crimes committed in Croatia and in Bosnia and Herzegovina clearly showed that Serbia had strong relations with those in the field on the ground during these wars. I would also like to remind you that despite some understanding that the first democratic government of Republic of Serbia after Milosevic elected in 2001 was pro-dealing with the past, due to the number of persons that were primarily due to the fact that they have agreed on arresting and transferring Milosevic to the Hague Tribunal, to the custody of the Hague Tribunal. Not many changes and real concrete steps were taken during this period and addressed the legacy of atrocities. I would like to address 4 areas of dealing with the past, primarily the war crimes trials and the achievements, developments, and progress and challenges that this area of dealing with the past have been facing. I would also like to address some of the issues in relation to establishing the truth about conflicts and creation of official narratives about the conflicts. And the third area which I will address is the issue of reparations for victims, so repairing the damage and addressing the suffering inflicted upon victims of war crimes, and finally the institutional reform. Trying to look at these 4 areas as the precondition for the process of reconciliation. And mainly I will address what the state has done, but also what the civil society has done, because looking from the outside, looking at the process from the outside, it is clear that civil society and not the states in the region of the Western Balkans have achieved the most when it comes to the dealing with the past and played a crucial role in addressing these issues. The first war crime trials in Serbia has begun before the law on prosecuting war crimes committed in the territory of former Yugoslavia was adopted in 2003. The first war crime trials actually started during even Milosevic in the late 1990s, but there were not many achievements or progress in this area. The first trials began in 2004, and what we can usually hear from the War Crimes Prosecutor Office, which is placed within the department, is placed within the Belgrade District Court, is that the Serbian court has indicted more people than, for example, the Hague Tribunal, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. That is one of their favorite arguments, looking at the statistics, because until now around more than 270 people were indicted for war crimes by the Serbian war crimes prosecutor. However, what is the problem with these trials? Although the numbers look very impressive, if you look under the surface, you will see that not more than 6 people among these 270 were actually belong to mid or high level positioned persons within the army, officials within the army or police. The Serbian prosecutor has been primarily focusing on prosecuting the low-level perpetrators, the direct perpetrators, those who were in the field, those who were mobilized, those who belonged to, as they say, paramilitary forces, or although, well, what we know from establishing connections between paramilitary forces and the police and the army, these forces were heavily under control of the Army of Yugoslavia and Ministry of Internal Affairs of Republic of Serbia. As I said, not more than 6 people. So what we have is a huge gap and a huge problem with impunity, because the Hague Tribunal had indicted several high-positioned members of the army and police, state representatives such as former president, another former president of Serbia, vice president of the vice prime minister, and so on, the chief of staffs of the army and the commanders. However, the people in the ground who are commanding the forces in the ground, especially in the conflict in Kosovo, have not been indicted or investigated at all. One of the most notorious examples is the example of the former chief of staff of the Serbian army, who was appointed in 2011, and until last year he was the acting head of chief of staff of the Serbian army, General Ljubiša Diković, for whom there are strong suspicions that in his area of responsibility during the conflict in Kosovo, more than 2,000 Kosovo Albanian civilians were killed, and a large number of those in that area were forced to leave their homes, and their homes were looted and destroyed. Another problem with the war crimes prosecutions in Serbia is a very long period of processing certain war crimes. One of the most notorious examples is the war crime trial for the case of Ovčara. That is in connection to the war crime committed by the Yugoslav People's Army and the local Serbs in the territory of Croatia in November 1991. And this case is actually the first case that opened the war crimes prosecutions in Serbia. That was the first indictment. And so basically what we have, like 14 years of processing the case. Actually, it took 14 years to our war crimes department and before the Belgrade District Court and our prosecutors to work on this case. What is the consequence of this kind of behavior? Basically, the defendants are dying out of old age. Victims are dying. Victims do not live long enough to wait for the justice and to see the justice for the suffering they have endured. People at the end are liberated, and finally what we have is again something that supports the process of impunity that we have in Serbia. In 2016, in order to resolve the problems and challenges that war crimes prosecutions are facing, and also to address basically the demands and requests from the European Commission, because this process is heavily dependent on the Chapter 23 and the European integration of Serbia. Serbia adopted the national strategy for war crimes prosecutions, and since then, according to that strategy, it was supposed to help to address these issues and to speed up the processing of war crimes, to enhance the regional cooperation. What are the results? Now, after almost 3 years of implementation of the national strategy, what we have in the period of, according to one of the organizations that have been following the implementation of this strategy, for the 14 months of implementation of the strategy, only 21 new indictment was raised. However, this may sound very, very like a significant number. However, out of these 21 new indictments, only 3 cases are actually the result of the work of the Serbian war crimes prosecutor. 18 cases are actually the result of the investigations of the Bosnian prosecutions and the Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina, basically based on regional cooperation. Another problem that we have is basically the lack of information and the lack of information about the war crimes trials, despite the fact that in the region there are often possibilities for news and media to enter the courtroom and to basically provide information to the citizens. In our case, despite the law which allows media to enter the courtroom, our judicial powers do not allow for media to enter the courtroom, and therefore general public is not informed at all about the results of the war crimes prosecutions. They are not informed about the persons who are indicted. They are not informed about the established facts about the crimes. So basically, it allows for impunity to spread, but also to basically change and base the official narrative about the conflict on denial. Another area that I wanted to talk about is the area of truth seeking, and that is I got the information that we have to finish, so I I'm really, I hope that you will have a wonderful conference, and I would like to thank the organizers for this opportunity to at least present parts of the process of dealing with the past in Serbia.
Thank you very much for a very interesting summary of preconditions and conditions which are essential for the evolution of the reconciliation process in the Western Balkans. Mrs. Toma, are you ready to continue your presence during our panel? No. So thank you very much for your speech. I hope that it will be possible to continue the discussion with you. So see you soon in Poznan or maybe in Belgrade. Let's continue the discussion about the meaning, the practical meaning of the reconciliation process, talking about the Western Balkans area. Let's start with Miss Ahmetaj, maybe.
Vesna, you meant Vesna? No, no. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, the Zahodni Institute for invitation, and thank you, the staff, for going through the hassle with Lufthansa to have me here today. It's my pleasure. Yesterday, the first session was really fantastic because tackled several issues, in particular when it comes to the term reconciliation and also apology. I had around 23, 24 years experience practicing, but also academically in transitional justice and human rights, and in Kosovo, but I believe elsewhere in the Western Balkans, we haven't come to a common ground or common word how to deal with the term, not as a process, but a term. Term reconciliation is becoming very problematic, in particular in Kosovo. It has its linguistics problematics, but also the meaning. We do lots of work in the field. Not only we have done with documentation of the past, but now we are trying to work in collective memories, but also not only social part of social justice, but leave aside the criminal justice, which was left more or less in Kosovo to international actors and now to judiciary, Kosovo judiciary. When speaking about reconciliation and how we perceive it there, let me start with this. We do lots of lectures, lots of workshops around Kosovo in different regions. Kosovo is very small. With less than 2 million people, almost everybody knows everybody, but still it's a country with more than 60% of youngsters up to 35, so huge young population and vibrant, but these populations needs to be educated about the past, and students like you who were either born or they don't know what happens 20 years back. The only narrative, the most preferred narrative that they have about the past is what they heard from their parents. So when we ask them, what kind of truth do you believe? And what is the narrative that you believe most? And we give them 5 sources. The parents, family that have gone through the wars and experienced themselves the trauma, the media, the NGOs and civil society, politicians, history textbooks, and academia. Believe me or not, both Albanians and Serbs and all other 5 minorities that lives in Kosovo, they will tell you, we believe to our parents. 98%. Very, very 2% you can either call the media or, the NGOs and maybe history textbooks. What is the failure here? That youngsters like you, they don't trust the history textbooks that they read. They don't trust the history they learn. They don't trust the academic institutions. They don't trust the media, which they think are manipulated. And least, politicians are the lower. rank. This worries me a lot, because I could understand that the narratives that they heard from the parents are strong enough, but each parent has different experience that they interpret towards the youngsters. And then if they count that the only truth comes from their family, but not other truths that they hear from, and that the information they gather from other sources, it's really troubling us. So back in 2017, the center I used to run, we did a survey, both quantitative and qualitative survey, to ask people how we could deconstruct the word reconciliation and what that entails to people, what people think by reconciliation. Yesterday, the panelists precisely and very, very eloquently described it is a Christian word, or also has a much deeper meaning. It's a process. It's not only a term per se. But in Albanian, we don't even have it. We have it reconciling, I believe, I don't know, in Croatian and Serbian, we have it reconciling, but not reconciling. And then, but people take it as it is. Some politicians went more far, and they invented a new word like reconciling in Albanian doesn't have any meaning, and that doesn't even exist in dictionary. So all this is just to explain how we feel when we go in the field, and we discussed both in higher level and lower level the meaning of dealing with the past, what people think by dealing with the past, and are people ready to reconcile, and with whom to reconcile. In the polling that we have done back in 2017, and I think the data are quite valid today, it was interesting to see that people reconciliation see in two levels: the personal level of reconciling to each other after a quarrel, but also in community level. When it comes to community level, which we were interested to know more, in particular ethnic level, since the end of the war in 1999, then it takes the ethnic connotations, and in particular Serbian Albanian, not other minorities, because other minorities were not a problem. Serbian Albanian reconciling, and how we achieve that. It was interesting that Kosovo was a target, or was a place when the international community spent enormous amount of money to rebuild the society. And in particular, civil society was getting lots of amount of not only money, but also were strengthened, their capacities were strengthened a lot. So when we did polling, and also with different target groups, what is interesting is that it was precisely civil society members who were very irritated by the word reconciliation, and that they said, we don't want to hear it anymore. It's enough. Whatever we have done, it was done on behalf of reconciliation, but there is no reconciliation, you know. Do this activity for reconciling, do that activity for reconciling, but the abuse of the notion of reconciliation was more doing harm to the process than rather really reconciling people. Then respondents more or less saw the reconciliation process as a more organic process. This is how we think in Kosovo, a majority of people. Reconciliation is something brought from above. Oh, let's international actors, they brought the idea and that reconcile. So now people are thinking their own mind. It has to be bottom-up approach. We have to find among ourselves how to reconcile and what we should do. There are different brilliant ideas coming from different people, but still the notion of reconciliation, it doesn't feel, people don't feel it that is existed among us, and that we have to somehow develop it further. There is also a big discrepancy between generations. Those old people who lived in former Yugoslavia, they lived side by side and together, all ethnic groups, they are more prone and open to living together again. But youngsters like you, they live side by side in cities like Mitrovica, but they don't know anything about each other. It's like they are living with an ethnic group they've never heard of. And they are more hesitant and more, I would say, pessimistic in terms of living together in the future. The majority, predominantly majority of Albanians will ask, both including victims associations and all target groups, they want an apology from Serbian authorities. They think that only a sincere apology from Serbian authorities will melt the situation in Kosovo. On the other hand, the Serbian minorities and their civil society actors predominantly oppose the idea that anyone will dare to apologize on their names. They say the crimes are individual, therefore no political leader can apologize on my behalf. So here we see a huge gap between two ethnic groups. While the other wants apology, the other say absolutely why we should apologize to you. You have to apologize to us, because the Serbs can feel that they were victims as well in Kosovo conflict. Then this research also showed that those directly affected by the war, this is the most interesting finding we found. We asked survivors of war, women, widows, families of missing persons. We still have 1,700 missing in Kosovo. We ask sexual violated women, raped women during the war, and all these categories, they show more reluctance, but also readiness to reconcile and forgive, rather than those who have not been directly involved or who are not survivors. And in particular, this was interesting in war-torn regions in Kosovo. People were more ready to live together for the sake of the future generations, while those in eastern Kosovo, where the region which was not tackled by the conflict, they're more rigid and radical in terms of shaping the future together. This was itself findings that we were a bit surprised to see it. And there are some analysis we have done later why that might be happen. As I said, the trust towards the EU institutions is very low. Both Serbs and Albanians think that the EU has no capacity and determination, but is not strong enough to impose any kind of solution. So far, they are very, very negative about EU policies. One might expect among Albanians, but the Serbs are also very negative about this. And I'm going to finish, yeah. In terms of religion, we also asked what they think about the Catholic and all Islamic community, Catholic and Orthodox churches. So both respondents in Kosovo they think that according to them, the religion at its core is peaceful, but the clergy isn't necessarily the solution, and they don't find the clergy as an institution, authoritative, that can really bring about reconciliation among them. So they see institutions at the end of the day should and have the legitimacy to create peace, but so far that such attempts has not been done. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask Mrs. Dražana Lepir to take the floor.
Thank you. Hi to everyone. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this panel discussion, and thank you for organizing it. Because of a short time we have for this presentation, I will read what I wrote for today, just to not lose my focus, because in Bosnia and Herzegovina we are facing with various problems, and sometimes it's really hard to stay focused and make your point. So thank you for understanding. The war in Bosnia ended 20 years ago with an agreement that created two entities and a district which recognized three constituent ethnic groups, Serb, Bosniak, and Cross, as I think that you all know, effectively discriminating against all other groups and minorities, in which, as we can see now, ultimately created one of the most complex environments for reconciliation. The dealing with the past policies are still non-inclusive and one-sided, based and biased primarily on ethnic groups' leadership interests. The nationalistic rhetoric of officials, the regime-controlled media propaganda which fuels ethnic hate and intimidates the public with threats of war and conflict, the historical revisionism and reversion of true in historical books, they all speak about the lack of political will and intent to start a proper process of dealing with the past. This is well illustrated by the mere fact that there are still more than 7,000 missing persons out of the total of 34,964 reported. Of all the information used in this investigation, only 10% is coming from direct source material. The remaining 19% comes from field work investigation. Another important factor in this is the very poor social economical situation in Bosnia. In 5 years, since 2030, more than 170,000 people left Bosnia. That is more than 40,000 families. And it is almost completely due to them not believing this situation will improve. And an important constant here is the continuing abuse of ethno-national division. People are sick of the daily politics, verbal exchange on topics such as unification of Bosnia and Herzegovina and threats of another war being used to distract them from the real everyday issues such as the class division, terrible educational system, biased judicial system, poor and effective social welfare and health care. This is what they used and still use to stay in power for over 20 years now. A good way to summarize the state of reconciliation process is the slogan that states how absence of war doesn't not apply peace. The war here had an official end, but no winners. It has victims and perpetrators. That is the aftermath in which it exists, and it's almost impossible to establish which political gesture has installed it as such in dealing with past process. Due to all of the previous mentioned, the reconciliation dealing with the past process is mostly based on a personal process of an individual, which is connected to the immediate environment of the individual, their family, neighborhood, social circle, etc. In Bosnia, in post-traumatic society, where official institutions do not participate in dealing with the past process of reconciliation, instead of this, work is left to NGOs and individuals which are performing superhuman efforts to oppose to official ethnic narratives peddled by state media. I'm not happy to say that these efforts are still producing widely marginal results, as these, while certainly identifiable and real, are unfortunately very short-lived, limited to short-term effects. As I was a teenager when the war ended, it took me a long time to break the spell of propaganda and reach alternative sources of information, as back then there were no alternatives in the form we have today. And it's due to efforts of brave individuals that we now have an open space to work in, where victims of war crimes are placed first, not as an asset of national warmongering, but as a reminder where these nationalistic ideologies can lead people who share a common cultural, historical, and anti-fascist legacy. And it is precisely the work of one particular grassroots initiative, jer me se tiče, because it matters to me or because it concerns me, that I would like to point out. It was founded in 2013 in Prijedor and focused on establishing the White Armband Day, originalno Dan bijelih traka, in order to commemorate the event of May of 31st from 1922 92, sorry, when non-Serb population of Prijedor was forced to wear white armbands or display white sheets on houses, and to commemorate the 3,176 Prijedor residents killed or missing during the war. The initiative started after Prijedor authorities banned the public commemoration of the victims in 2012 on the 20th anniversary of the event. Following years, thanks to effort of the small group of dedicated people, activists, and citizens from all over Bosnia have gathered in Prijedor and held a protest walk through the city center, ending in public commemoration event at the central square, despite the opposition from the leading local and state political structures, some calling it a gay parade, which was called by that time Mayor Marko Pavić, gay parade, due to the wide support it had and its hopes of playing on the anti-homosexual sentiment present in our society. A group of activists from Prijedor and Banja Luka was instrumental in making this happen, and they were exposed to extreme public pressure and lynched by state media or individuals leading or representing their Serb nationalistic movement. And this shows how, in the end, key moments are defined not by official policies, but by individuals with strong but clear convictions. The initiative was also made to create a monument to 102 children from Prijedor, which were murdered during the course of the war, but it has not yet succeeded due to heavy opposition from Serb nationalistic dominated political leadership in Prijedor. However, consistent efforts of the initiative's members have managed to bring this story into the international space, creating a whole new possibility for its existence, where there are no opportunities for local nationalistic politicians to abuse the victims, and where there are no nationalist identities or marking, just pure demand for justice for these victims, regardless of their identity, and on the whole territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The international breakout was key in getting the upper hand on the political swamp of ethno-nationalist parties in power. It was opposed to discrimination, nationalism, and all forms of fascism, open or indirect, public or hidden. It is a fight against crime denial in Prijedor and elsewhere, an invitation to overcome conflict and hatred and to be human to each other above all else. The initiative humanistic approach is unique in Bosnia and Herzegovina, just as the fact that each year public space is used to emphasize that these topics will not be solved behind closed doors and that they will be a part of public discourse. It is precisely this that we opposed by right nationalists and which forced them to move from direct denial to accepting the crimes were made. And offering an explanation for it too irrelevant to mention it now here. There are many other initiatives that united the people from all sides and similar activities that managed to make progress, but once again, daily political struggle with artificial crisis, scaremongering is holding the people's minds hostage to these nationalistic ideologies. Finally, I would like to mention that for the last 3 years, I have been running a project called Social History of Banja Luka, based on oral history or testimonies of Banja Luka citizens, where we ask them about Banja Luka in 80s, 90s, about the war and post-war period, about the cultural and social dimension of Banja Luka, which was a multicultural, multi-religious and multi-ethnic town before the war. This way, we want to show how much of this was erased after the war, with streets and neighborhoods renamed, people displaced and forced to leave their hometown forever. I just want to stress that in Banja Luka weren't war. Doesn't happen armed fire. Yeah. Thank you. We want to highlight the fact to remind the people that we used to share everything before, language, art, history, were neighbors and friends, and that the war and post-war process have deleted all the result of emancipation of society made since the Second World War. This project is still in its early stage and it is a work in progress, but we have already received positive feedback on it from people who enjoy reading or want to contribute to this story. Thank you. I'm sorry for reading, but I wanted to be like really short and focused. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in the meantime, our special guest joined our seminar, so I would like to welcome Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Poland, Mr. Szymon Szynkowski-Welsenk, who is a very important, I would say, guest because of the fact that the Western Summit in Poznań was co-organized by himself. He was one of the main activities to organize this event in Poznań, and also I would say that today's seminar is also some kind of extension of this summit, so thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much. Let's continue remarks. Ms. Vesna Teršelič.
Thank you so much for invitation, especially because the Western Balkan Summit was held here in Poznań. And the next Western Balkan Summit will be held in May in Croatia, as Croatia will take on presidency of European Union Council. So it is that Croatia, as a new member state of EU, could have a particular role in peace building related to Western Balkans European integrations, although I'll put some questions around that, how constructive that role is. And as having the title of our overall session and our conference related to overcoming conflicts, I would first like to say, what does it mean overcoming which conflicts? In our case, actually, not just in Croatia, but in post-Yugoslav countries, it would mean ending unfinished wars and dealing with legacy of political violence during Yugoslav socialism. So we are still in process of transitions, different transitions, long-taking transitions. It is that Poland is maybe the country which commemorated the start of Second World War on September 1st with most vigor, understandably so, as Second World War have started here. Although some would argue maybe it started when Hitler was elected, but armed struggle have started here. And it's that you might be aware what might mean unfinished war. So is that, I would say that in Croatia and other post-Yugoslav countries, we have not managed neither to finish Second World War, we neither dealt with a legacy of political violence during Yugoslav socialism, and in particular have not come very far in dealing with legacy of armed conflicts of the 90s, starting in 1991 and finishing with armed conflict in Macedonia in 2001. So we have still a lot on the plate. I would say that in this moment, especially in Croatia, we are much further in eventually distorting the facts, either facts establishing through historiography or judicially established facts than we have been 10 years ago. So is that you might think there is kind of linear progress, or you might see history as a linear process of social and political conditions getting always better and better and better. But I'm afraid that we have all seen examples of traveling back. We have all seen examples of regression concerning respect for human rights or freedom of expression or media freedom in our lifetimes, or in particular in the last 10 years. So it's that these are serious problems. So I'll draw this as an outline, and I'll come back to this question on the end. In Croatia, the way to deal with legacy of the 90s first goes through large expectation from trials. And trials for war crimes committed in Croatia and other post-Yugoslav countries are still ongoing. You should be aware that in Croatia, a bit less than 20,000 people have been killed or forcibly disappeared. In whole region, more than 130,000 people have been killed or forcibly disappeared in period from 91 to 2001, and that part of the crimes committed, and just recall that in Geneva Conventions, what is allowed is soldiers killing other soldiers. It's not allowed to kill civilians. It's not allowed to kill imprisoned soldiers. So is that part of the killed persons, the victims of more than 130,000, have become a subject of judicial investigation and finally trials, both on international level at International Tribunal for War Crimes in former Yugoslavia, which in its length of work have indicted 161 persons, with its seat in Hague in the Netherlands. All of them have been brought to the tribunal. Maybe not all have seen the hearings because have not survived, some have committed suicide. But it is that enormous effort was done to eventually ensure that humanitarian law violations have been addressed on international level, and some of the highest responsibles, I'm sure you heard about Karadzic or Mladic, have been sentenced there. And some of the appeal proceedings, even one first level trial, are still ongoing. No time to go to details. Besides, you have heard Marijana Toma, there are war crimes trials in Croatia, in Montenegro, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Kosovo, and these trials are still ongoing. Public and our societies are especially keen on war crimes trials and have very high expectations. I have to say that besides tribunal, the number of verdicts which have been eventually approved by Supreme Court, in which appeal proceedings are finished, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Croatia, Serbia, is very high. I would say this is incomparable with any situation which was globally witnessed anywhere in history. So we experienced much more criminal justice than anyone else before. Still, we are further from any kind of peace building and trust building than we have been 10 years ago. So you should not undermine the importance of criminal justice, but this is what research is showing, this is what our societies are living through, and this should be taken in consideration by European Union and European Union member states. Concerning search for forcibly disappeared, also, likewise, the efficiency of search was never so high than in case of post-Yugoslav countries. Still, when Croatian Prime Minister or President of Republic of Croatia speaks about why our regional relationships, in particular relationship with Serbia, which is especially difficult, is not better, they say when the forcibly disappeared will be found, our relationships will improve. When the trials will be more efficient, our relationships will be improved. So this is used as a very strong argument in explaining why the process of trust building is not more efficient. Concerning the truth-seeking, civil society organizations have noticed a while ago that criminal justice will not be sufficient, that our societies need more. In sense of truth-seeking, more than 10 years ago, a very important initiative for a regional commission to establish facts about victims, survivors, perpetrators have been launched, and we had mixed success in advocating it as civil society coalition, including more than 2,000 organizations and individuals from all post-Yugoslav countries. We have approached presidents, and at certain time presidents of Croatia and Serbia, President of Kosovo and President of Macedonia have been open to it. After elections, of course, elections come and new presidents walk in. Some other presidents have not been so keen. So it is that the initiative have not been supported really on official level. There is still a hope. And what human rights organizations continue to do, including Documenta and Humanitarian Law Center, both in Belgrade and Kosovo, is we document what happened to killed and disappeared. And we are gradually publishing result of that research. You will not be surprised to hear that the names and circumstances of death of killed and forcibly disappeared have not been published by our governments nor by scientific institutions. So this difficult task of finding out this field research and visiting victims and survivors is really left to civil society organizations. Concerning reparations, in Croatia, the breakthrough was related to a law on rights of survivors of rape and sexual violence. Although for all other civilian victims, law is currently discussed. We have many years of discussion about rights of civilian victims behind us. We are not sure will the amendments proposed be adopted or not, but rights of other civilian victims are not respected. And it's very odd that Croatia and Slovenia, as members of European Union, are of course obliging to directive on minimal standards of victims of crime, but this doesn't include victims of war crime because crimes against them have been committed before and it doesn't help. Concerning institutional reform, reform of police and reform of judiciary was particularly important for rising efficiency of investigations and trials. But it's again that even when reform have been partially successful, it might still backfire. We are not going now in details, but police had reformed, but in the last years we have increasing number of police brutality incidents on the borders, as Croatia is now outside border of European Union, and police is using force in stopping migrants, what should never have happened. So it's that I'm coming back from where I started. What is happening in our societies is that historically and judicially established facts are being relativized or even negated. These facts related to the Second World War or political violence during socialist Yugoslavia or to eventual facts written in the judicially established and legally binding verdicts are freely challenged. You might say this is part of a freedom of expression, but when it's happening on the mass scale, we are speaking about distortion of historical facts and judicially established facts, and we are speaking about problem of not acknowledging suffering of victims and their communities. And if you look at what reconciliation might mean in our countries, it's actually reconciliation would mean that both on level of society, of public personalities and our political representatives, there is widely shared agreement that historically established facts and judicially established facts should be respected. We are very far from that. So it's that the largest body of final verdicts of international tribunal is related to genocide in Srebrenica. Genocide in Srebrenica is freely and frequently put in question, and there is no sensible answer. And I have to say that I have a question for you as students and citizens of Poland. I have spoken with some of you and have realized that the issue of reparations, which was mentioned here at the panel yesterday, is coming in discussion, at least on individual level. Are you sure that Second World War is finished? Was it sufficient that the Polish-German process of trust building have been completed with the agreements which have been signed and approved by both sides on governmental level? Are you sure that European Union has an answer, or it's maybe that European Union through Commission and Parliament and the governments of its member states have not been serious enough about looking at what it would mean to end the Second World War, what it would mean to deal and engage with violence committed during socialist and communist times, and what it would mean to deal and engage with violence committed in wars in former Yugoslavia between 1991 and 2001, and which are their lessons to be learned and how to become better in dealing with the suffering, which obviously is still not acknowledged sufficiently.
Thank you very much for you all for such comprehensive remarks considering different aspects of the reconciliation process in the Western Balkan area. At this stage, I would like to ask Mr. Szymon Szynkowski-Welsenk, Secretary of State for Polish Community Abroad, European Policy and Public Diplomacy, to take the floor. Mr. Deputy Minister.
Bardzo dziękuję. Szanowni Państwo, powiedziano, jestem polskim wiceministrem spraw zagranicznych, ale jednocześnie absolwentem tej uczelni i poznaniakiem, i tym bardziej cieszę się, że kolejna z konferencji w ramach wydarzeń towarzyszących szczytowi Bałkanów Zachodnich odbywa się tutaj w Poznaniu przy współorganizacji Uniwersytetu im. Adama Mickiewicza oraz Instytutu Zachodniego, czyli poznańskiej jednostki badawczej, zajmującej się w znacznej swojej działalności relacjami polsko-niemieckimi, ale dzisiaj już te badania i te analizy wykraczają znacznie szerzej ponad to, a w związku ze szczytem Bałkanów Zachodnich, no również siłą rzeczy Instytut Zachodni zagląda do regionu Bałkanów Zachodnich. Za to organizatorom serdecznie dziękuję. Nie będę bardzo szczegółowo wnikał w temat rekoncyliacji i pojednania, ponieważ raczej przyszedłem tutaj, żeby posłuchać tych refleksji, bo cały czas od momentu, kiedy zostałem mianowany pełnomocnikiem do spraw organizacji szczytu Bałkanów Zachodnich w Poznaniu, staram się ten region jak najlepiej poznać i akurat kwestia pojednania w regionie, akurat kwestia wzajemnych relacji jest na tyle skomplikowana, że mam takie poczucie, że cały czas dowiaduję się czegoś nowego, cały czas czegoś nowego się uczę, ale też pytanie właśnie zadane w temacie, czy my jako Polska możemy naszym doświadczeniem w zakresie pojednania polsko-niemieckiego dzielić się i czy te doświadczenia są czymś wartościowym dla regionu Bałkanów Zachodnich, jest pytaniem dobrze postawionym. Myślę, że to jest doświadczenie, którym możemy się dzielić ze wszystkimi jego zaletami, których nie brakuje, ale też z kwestiami jeszcze niezamkniętymi w procesie pojednania polsko-niemieckiego. To pojednanie jest bardzo zaawansowane. Dzisiaj Niemcy są dla nas partnerem, najważniejszym partnerem gospodarczym, bardzo ważnym partnerem politycznym, partnerem, z którym mamy dobre relacje, ale także partnerem, z którym doświadczenie historyczne i tego świadomość jest nie tylko po stronie polskiej, ale również, co chciałem podkreślić, po stronie niemieckiej. Doświadczenie historyczne pojednania cały czas jeszcze jest ścieżką niezakończoną. I nie chodzi tutaj o te najbardziej dyskutowane dziś, mam wrażenie, w tych relacjach kwestie odszkodowań. To oczywiście jest ważny temat, ale chodzi też tutaj o kwestię choćby symboliki nazewniczej, która cały czas również w niemieckich mediach wraca. Mówię tutaj o tym sformułowaniu polskie obozy śmierci, czy polskie obozy koncentracyjne, które tak nas boli, które jest pewnym takim sygnałem i symbolem no, niepełnej wiedzy, czy niepełnej świadomości o tym, jak wyglądała historia II wojny światowej, a to w Polsce jest odbierane w sposób bardzo bolesny. A więc to doświadczenie pojednania polsko-niemieckiego jest o tyle wartościowe, że jest jeszcze cały czas procesem niezakończonym, choć daleko bardziej zaawansowanym niż dyskusja o wzajemnych relacjach w regionie Bałkanów Zachodnich. Co my możemy w związku z tym zrobić poza dzieleniem się tym doświadczeniem? Myślę, że ten rok pokazał, że Polska może dla regionu Bałkanów Zachodnich zrobić bardzo wiele i to nie tylko w kontekście zachęcania do tego, żeby wzajemne konflikty były wyjaśniane, były rozwiązywane, żeby proces pojednania tam na Bałkanach Zachodnich postępował. Możemy też dla tego regionu czynić w wielu innych wymiarach całkiem sporo. Możemy po pierwsze inicjować projekty, wspólne projekty gospodarcze, wspólne projekty między krajami regionu, które wzmacniają łączność w regionie, a także łączność tego regionu z Unią Europejską. Mówię o projektach choćby infrastrukturalnych i sprawiają, że dialog jest niejako wymuszany. Jeżeli trzeba zrealizować projekt wspólnej autostrady, wspólnego gazociągu, wspólnej linii kolejowej, wreszcie jeżeli trzeba wspólnie porozumieć się co do opłat roamingowych, siłą rzeczy dialog między krajami jest wymuszany, można powiedzieć, czy te kraje są mobilizowane do tego dialogu i to jest taki powiedziałbym, no, pozytywny przykład presji politycznej, która sprawia, że mamy szansę czynić kolejne kroki właśnie do stabilizacji sytuacji w regionie. Z drugiej strony, ponieważ elity polityczne bardzo często są związane pewnym takim impasem napięcia. Ja to obserwowałem także podczas właśnie spotkań, czy w Warszawie, czy w Poznaniu, kiedy przyjeżdżali tutaj ministrowie spraw zagranicznych, czy premierzy, że w szczególności między kilkoma krajami no, pewnym stałym schematem było powtarzanie się tez, które były tezami no, nie budującymi porozumienia. Co w związku z tym można zrobić? I my na to postawiliśmy jako Polska, organizując szczyt Bałkanów Zachodnich i wszystkie wydarzenia towarzyszące. Inicjować tą dyskusję o wspólnych projektach i tą zmierzającą właśnie do pojednania na poziomie społeczeństwa obywatelskiego. Dlatego właśnie jednym z najważniejszych komponentów szczytu Bałkanów Zachodnich był szczyt think tanków i spotkanie różnych przedstawicieli, różnych organizacji NGO-sów społeczeństwa obywatelskiego, bo jeżeli na dole będzie zgoda co do tego, że trzeba te problemy przezwyciężać i będzie też poszukiwanie recepty, jak je przezwyciężać i ten sygnał z dołu pójdzie do góry i będzie swego rodzaju też elementem presji na elitach politycznych, daje to szansę na przyspieszenie tego procesu. Uznaliśmy, że ta realna integracja zarówno regionu Bałkanów Zachodnich z Unią Europejską, ale też integracja rozumiana jako przezwyciężenie napięć w regionie może się odbywać tylko bottom-up. To znaczy tylko najpierw musi odbyć się na dole wśród przedstawicieli społeczeństwa obywatelskiego, a następnie z tego będą wynikały decyzje polityczne zmierzające do poczynienia kolejnych kroków. I wreszcie kwestie, tutaj też poruszone przez Państwa, kwestie bezpieczeństwa. To była kwestia zarysowana mocno podczas prezydencji Wielkiej Brytanii w procesie berlińskim. Jedna kwestia to kwestia skupiająca się na poszukiwaniu osób zaginionych, niezwykle ważna kwestia dla Bałkanów Zachodnich. Z drugiej strony inicjatywa zmierzająca do ograniczenia obecności w regionie małej broni, tak zwanej małej broni, czyli no, redukcja uzbrojenia w regionie, która ma obniżyć ten element zapalnika do ewentualnych konfliktów. My to kontynuowaliśmy, zaangażowaliśmy tam jako Polska konkretne środki finansowe w te projekty, zarówno związane właśnie z ograniczeniem kwestii obecności broni w regionie, ale też angażujemy spore środki i teraz przekazujemy właśnie w tych tygodniach wpłaty na wspólne projekty młodzieżowe organizacji RAJKO, na fundusz inwestycyjny Bałkanów Zachodnich, już drugą transzę Polska przekazuje, po to właśnie, żeby no, być odpowiedzialnym graczem w zakresie polityki międzynarodowej skierowanej ze strony polskiej do regionu Bałkanów Zachodnich. Jeżeli utrzymamy ten stopień zaangażowania, który mieliśmy przez ostatni rok w regionie, jeżeli Polska utrzyma, a taka jest nasza ambicja, tą silną markę w regionie, którą zbudowaliśmy, jest również szansa na to, że będziemy tym depozytariuszem zaufania, tym honest brokerem takich procesów rekoncyliacji, o których tutaj była mowa. I to jest nasz cel strategiczny. Bałkany Zachodnie stały się jako region nowym kierunkiem strategicznym polskiej polityki zagranicznej. Teraz oczywiście wielkim wyzwaniem jest utrzymanie tego, co zbudowaliśmy przez ostatni rok, ale no, liczymy na to, że choćby dzięki temu, że tych wyzwań nie brakuje, że są sprawy, no, z wielkim smutkiem podchodzę do tego, że nie otwarto negocjacji akcesyjnych z Macedonią Północną i Albanią. To jest niedobry sygnał. To sprawia, że stopień zaufania regionu do Unii Europejskiej spada. Polska była w gronie tych państw, zdecydowanej większości państw, która opowiadała się za otwarciem negocjacji akcesyjnych, jak chodzi o te dwa państwa. Nie udało się. Okazało się, że jedno silne państwo Unii Europejskiej, Francja, która na co dzień posługuje się retoryką przecież bardzo prounijną, mówi o tym, że chciałaby więcej Europy. Akurat w przypadku regionów Bałkanów Zachodnich uważa, że to więcej Europy jest nie dla wszystkich, że to więcej Europy powinno być reglamentowane. My się z takim podejściem nie zgadzamy. Uważamy, że jeżeli ma być więcej Unii Europejskiej, to więcej Unii Europejskiej musi oznaczać również więcej obecności i wpływu Unii Europejskiej także poza jej granicami. Nie tylko w krajach Partnerstwa Wschodniego, gdzie już od 10 lat ten format promujemy, ale także w regionie Bałkanów Zachodnich. Ale to na marginesie. Chciałem Państwu jeszcze raz podziękować za organizację tej konferencji i dziękuję za tak znakomitą obecność tutaj ekspertów z regionu. Państwu serdecznie za to dziękuję.
Mr. Deputy Minister, thank you so much for sharing your time and remarks with us. I think it's a great moment for a coffee break, and in 15 minutes we will continue discussion and the topic, of course.